anyway, because it was conducted on rats, and presumably when a rat's life passes before its eyes, it's a very different question.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of people who would be deeply sceptical about how much it tells us about the human experience of death, because they are deeply sceptical about the degree which we share life experiences with rats. It's not at all clear that rats have a well-defined sense of self, whether or not they have an understanding of what death is, or whether or not their memories are formed in the same way as ours. My own suspicion is that rats have a consciousness which is in many ways similar to our own, but it's not going to have such a well-developed sense of self. It's not going to have they're not going to have out-of-body experiences where they look back and see their own body, because they're probably not that sure what their own body looks like. So there would be deep skepticism amongst many people about how much it tells us about human experience. And in any case, it might not tell us that much about the rat's experience either. It doesn't rule out the possibility that the near-death experience is similar for rats and human beings, but it doesn't provide any evidence for it either.
So where does this test leave us?
It leaves many people surprised who wouldn't have expected coordinated, arguably meaningful activity to continue in the brain 30 seconds after the heart has stopped. A lot of people would have expected, perhaps naively, that the brain activity would just die away in the first few seconds after it stopped receiving oxygen. Other people might have expected the resulting activity in the brain after the heart has stopped to be chaotic or meaningless. But in fact, when you look at the data, it clearly shows that there's a coordinated, arguably meaningful set of responses in the brain after the heart has stopped, which means that it leaves open the question about whether or not this leads to conscious experiences in that time, which is quite a long time. It's about 30 seconds.
That was Dr. Martin Coath, and it's certainly got lots of you thinking. Nearly 1,000 comments on that story on the BBC News website, so there's a lot more scientific explanation of how these near-death experiences might work, according to the experiment on rats. Personally, it's made my head hurt just thinking about how rats might have their lives flashing before them in their last moments. Now, have you ever fancied taking a turn around town in a Chevy or a Cadillac? It might not be quite as glamorous as you imagine, you know. Cuba's streets, they're full of these classic